All right, so we're going to cover Canon's Accounting Manager right now. And Canon's Accounting Managers, to me, outside of like image manipulation and everything, this is probably one of the most important pieces of software we have, just in terms of helping you make sure that you're profitable, not only in the way you're selling your images, but the way you're printing your images. And when I say in the way you're printing your images, what I mean is Accounting Manager gives you the ability and the tools to see how much everything you're printing costs to within a thousandth of a penny. So let me go ahead and slide Accounting Manager onto the screen here. And let's size it up just a little bit larger. So when you open Accounting Manager, this is what you're going to get, and it's a jumble of a lot of information that you'll see over on the screen right now. And we'll go across again. This is going to be kind of an abbreviated version, but you can already see there's a lot of information in there. So the first and most important thing you got to do is when you download Accounting Manager, you're going to click on this button with the gear on it on the left, and this is where you would actually add a printer. So I'm not going to add a printer because I'm not plugged into any, but we're just going to kind of show you how. You would just click on Add Printer, and you would either type in an IP address or search based on whether it was plugged into a USB or however it's hooked up. And anything that's available to be added, like if I had a printer plugged in, it would show me everything that was plugged in and available right here, and I could actually select it and add it to the system. In fact, I will be going later today and actually adding a GP4000 to pull the data from that. So this is the first step. You've got to add your printer so that you can pull the data from it. What it's going to do is it's going to pull all the jobs. So you see I got a GP2000 and a Pro 2000 and a GP300 here, and you can see all the jobs that are there available for you to get data on. So the next thing is, okay, well, I need to add costs as well. So I have to select my printer here and hit my Pro 2000. So what you would do is it's going to show you what size inks you have loaded in, and you're going to have to go through and add your unit cost. So I would actually go through and click whatever I spent on the inks. So at the time I got this one, I spent 187 for my 330 milliliters. So that would actually go through and put the ink cost in so that I'm able to calculate how much the prints cost based on how much the ink was. And as you see, the Chrome Optimizer slightly less expensive than the rest of the inks. So that one cost me a little less money. So I put my ink cost in first. Now, if all your inks are the same price, you can actually just enter one and then hit apply to all inks, and it's going to automatically do that. So you're not having to enter each one separately. The next thing I have to do is to add my cost for paper. So I actually have a few papers that you'll see here that have not had costs entered in yet. So
what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to do the cost for Canon Scrim Banner Vinyl. I'm going to click on that. We're going to click on paper. I'm going to go down and we're going to click on add. So once we're there, we're going to scroll down until we actually find the Canon Scrim Banner Vinyl right here. And we're going to put roll, and it is a 24-inch roll. It is a 100-foot roll. There's one roll total, and it's actually a 40-foot roll. Our unit cost is $143.87.
all right, start. Okay. There we go, just like that. Okay, so anyway, if you see here where it's custom, that's because it's actually off of a roll, and it's a 24-inch roll. So actually, when I went into Scrim Vinyl Banner, did everything the way I was supposed to. Now, if you look, it's actually giving me an overall cost on everything. So, for example, this particular one was $9.39.2 to print the specific one. So I can actually go through, let's say I picked just a random one of my prints here that I had printed out. You can actually see a ton of data that's associated with this. So it tells you exactly the output size that you printed. It tells you the total job cost, the total paper cost. So in this job, it was $4.12, or actually $4.13 if we round up for the total job. Of that, $2.66, rounding up, was paper. Now, a lot of people always talk ink so expensive, ink so expensive. Well, if you actually look at their breakdown, the ink is always about half, or not quite half, of what the paper cost is. Paper is always a little bit more expensive. It's just that when you buy ink, you're buying bulk of ink, so it just seems like a lot of money. Paper is always going to be your higher cost. Your total ink cost is $1.47, rounding up, cent. So you can actually see your individual breakdowns in terms of knowing, okay, if I was selling this image that I printed out, and this would be 12 by 24 by 12. So whatever it was I printed on that day was a 12 by 24. It cost me $4.13 to print. So I would know that from my cost of goods, that's what I've got invested. And then I need to make sure that I cover labor and any other costs that I want to incorporate into that, and then put my profit in based off of that. But then I can get into here and see the total ink consumed was 2.579 milliliters, so a 1,000th of a milliliter that I've done. The total square footage of paper, the width and the length, everything that I've done there. But then I can get down here, like I said before, and I can see each individual ink that I've done and go through and see how much of each ink I've done in that specific one. I can see on this one that I used, that's my Canon photo paper. Of the inks that I used, it looks like I used a ton of gray and a ton of matte black. So this must have had a lot of black and white to it in terms of the image. So this really just gives me a really great breakdown of this. Now, the next thing I can do is, like I said, if I wanted to select a certain section of prints that I wanted to do a report on, whether it's a day's worth, a week's worth, a month's worth, or just an individual print. If I was doing an individual, I'd do exactly what I just did. But if I was doing like a report where I was doing weeks, days, or months, I could actually select on the section I want. I can actually click this and then save it out. Now, I've already done a selection, so I'm not going to make you guys sit through waiting for it to, and it's pretty quick, but I could select my section and it's going to give me a CSV file that will open in Photoshop or in Excel. And then within that, basically, I can see that full report that's exactly like what you just saw with the breakdown in each of the categories. So it's a long way across, but you can see each individual ink. And once you've imported this into Excel, you can actually go through and do your tables to where it shows you totals or however you want to do it. But it gives you the ability to run reports on your total cost or total amount of each specific ink, all those different types of things that you would possibly want to do in terms of getting your total cost per month, per week, per year, in terms of whether you're determining how much you printed for the month or determining how much ink you've used so you can know how to spend money on ink in the future. The value of that is it's not showing you just a thousandth of a penny of the total cost of the print. It's showing you to a thousandth of a penny and to the milliliter as well, how much of each individual ink you're using, whether it's per print, per week, per month, per quarter, however often you're printing. It can show you incredible amounts of data. The value of that is when you're purchasing your ink, you can look at these reports and say, okay, well, let me run a report and see how much ink I printed for each specific ink for the month. And we're going to do a deeper dive on that. And you could say, okay, well, I'm using a lot of this specific ink. Well, with most of our machines, you have the ability to have 2, sometimes even 3 different sizes of ink cartridges you can use. And the larger the ink cartridge you use, the lower the per milliliter cost is. So if I have an ink that I use a ton of, like let's say I use a lot of photo black, well, I would want to get the 700 milliliter of that, which is the largest cartridge I can get, because that's the cheapest that ink's going to be. Whereas if I had another ink, like let's say I never did matte prints, but I have to have matte ink in there. So matte black, I would say, okay, well, I never use that. I use that the least amount. So let me get the smallest version of that and go with 160 milliliters of that. And then inks that I kind of use a middle amount of, like I don't use a ton of it, but I use some of it, maybe get the 330s of that. So you can use it not only to help you set your cost of your printing and make sure that you're making sure that you're profitable and you're able to account for how much everything is costing, but you can also use it in helping determine how to purchase your ink for your machine.